You guys are awesome. Now I can see you guys put likes, comments, and you engage with content and you share your ideas and your thoughts on LinkedIn and Facebook everywhere. Thank you so much, because when you engage like that, that is the encouragement and that is the motivation to do more and more content. And also because of your ideas, I can find more interesting topic and more interesting experience to share with you guys. So it just costs you nothing. Just click this thumbs up button if you like this video and put a comment if you really like this, and if you have some feedback, just share with it. So before I do this today video, I search all over the internet to see if there are any tutorial which we can use directly on production, so then I don't need to do this video and I can direct you to that particular tutorial or a video. But unfortunately, I couldn't find any. They may be available, but I couldn't find any. There are enough tutorials how to use a feature flags, but those are just a kind of a like academic tutorial. Like it just say, okay, you have a feature flag, so this is how you can enable and this is how you can disable, and this is how it works with the service. But the problem with those, we can't use those on a production environment, because in a production environment we run multiple instances, right? And it is not just one instance per service, we run multiple instances. So once you enable or disable a feature, all the instances should propagate those values, all the instances should aware about that. And also if particular instance restart, then it should remember which features were enabled and which features were disabled. So therefore we can't use those tutorials but available already. So therefore I decided to do real industry standard, industry grade tutorials where you can go directly and apply into your project. So stay tuned with this video. So here I'm going to explain this in Java today with a Spring Boot, but if you need this with a Node.js or a Nest.js based services, let me know. I'll create other video for that as well, right? So now this is just basic setup. For this I am adding web, right? And just not really, but I'm going to add the actuator, and also I need Lombok, right? So what I'm going to do is, as usual, I'm going to create a basic project for you, and then I'm going to edit toggles, right? I just create a basic Spring Boot project. Let me to explain what I'm going to do today. So as you know, my tutorial how it works, I just create a basic project and then I'm adding the features, so then you know how this feature works. So therefore I didn't add any other dependencies other than the basic project. So when we go with this, so we will add one by one dependencies, so you know how this works. So what we are going to do today, we are going to practically experience trunk based development. So yes, last video we discussed we can do the trunk based development, then we can do the feature labels, and also we can enable and disable those features, also known as a feature toggles. So today we are going to practically experience how the feature toggle works and how we can work with those. I'm going to basically create required packages, right? So now we have all the basic packages. So here I'm going to first create employee DTO. For now, I'm going to comment this line and I'll show you why I need this line. Right, so now I have employee and ID and name, city and contact number, right? So here I'm going to create employee controller, and also I'm going to create employee service. Right. So now here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a method to get all employees, and I'm just going to return employees from my service. So this can be come from a database, this can be come from any other service, but here just for demonstration purpose I'm going to have a fixed employee list. So then I'm going to return that with the service. Right, so now it can return employee list. So I go back to controller and I inject this variable. Right, so now I have this employee service and employees endpoint. So what it does is it call employee service and got the get all endpoint, get all employees, and then that return this hard coded employees, right? So this is our basic service. So now let's go and change application configuration. You know, like I don't like this properties file, I want to convert this to YAML. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is server port I'm going to set 0, so then it always get dynamic port, so then I can run you multiple instances and I can show you how it works. And that's it I need for now. And then I'm going to run this service. Okay, so it's running. So it's running on this port. So let's go to Postman and I change the port and then I run this, so I get the response. Now we get all the response. That means our services work as expected. Now with the real drama starts. So that means let's assume this service is already in production. Now we need to add new feature. That means when we get the employee, we need to return the project code as well. If the employee is already in a project, we need to return the project code. But this, let's assume this feature, implementation of this feature take weeks or months. But meantime, we need to run other bug fixes, other features and everything into production. We can stop this feature being merged into the mainstream because we discussed disadvantages by doing so. Right? So if you don't remember what is the trunk based development, and if you don't know that, and if you don't know the advantages and disadvantages, go and refer previous video. So now what we are going to do is we are going to enable our code, we are going to modify our code to return the project code. Also same time we are going to block this being shipped to production until we complete test and accept by the UAT. In order to do that, first I'm going to create a feature enum, right? So here I'm going to create features enum and I'm going to implement it from features, right? So okay, I forgot to add my dependencies. So now I need to add few dependencies. Okay, let me go to POM file and go here, and I'll add after this one, so then it clears. So I need to add toggles console, right? I need to add toggles console, and also I need to add toggles spring starter. So this one, right? I need these two, right? So let's go with this for now. And here I'm going to implement from features. This feature come from the toggles. Okay, so let me go back to POM file and update my project. Okay, so I go back here and implement feature from toggles. So this is my feature. In first I'm not going to use it, but let me create that first. So I'm just say is project enabled, right? So this is my feature. Okay, so in the employee service I'm going to auto wire feature manager, right? So this I need to import. Why it's not automatically import, right? So now you can see it's toggles feature manager, right? So now I'm going to create a feature here. Keep in mind we don't need this because of we created enum, but for this example I'm going to do this one first and I'm going to remove this and go for the enum. Why? Because for your certain project this might enough for you, right? So what I'm going to do is public static final string is project enabled equal new named feature, I think, right? So I'm going to give this itself. Oh, this should be feature, right? I go to application YAML file and I'm going to create this feature enable from here. So I'm going to say toggles console secure equal false. So because this is otherwise I might not be able to access the console. I'll show you what the console is, and then I can tell toggles features and then is project enabled, right? So this has to be same name, is enabled, and you can say enable true, right? Now our feature is enabled. Okay, so this is the what going to refer from here. Okay, we are going to get rid of this in later. And then here I'm going to create a fixed map, right? So this may simulate as our database, So you can refer something like this. So I have a project. If the project is based on the ID, we return the project. Okay. So now what we're doing here, we refer this variable. Okay, let's go something like this first, right? The very basic example. If is feature enabled, right? So we are going to have this, and else we are going to have this. Okay, so we are going to check this something like this, right? So feature manager dot is active is project enabled, right? If this is active, it will go like this. If it is not, it will go like this. Okay, so here what we are going to do is we are going to add this our feature, right? So project dot get ID, so it has to be get, right? So for this one we need to come back here and go to our DTO employee and add the project, right? The string project, right? So come back here. So now I'm going to copy this for everywhere. So now it will go like this, and here is the problem comes, right? So now you can see here in this time, this is I need to pass null. Okay, so this is why I told I need some property, special property, right? Because see, our base rule is user should not see any changes. Okay, so now we are good. So we are going to run this program, and if you run this, okay, so port is changed now. So it is a this port, and if you run this now, you will see I get the project, right? I get the project. So now what I'm going to do is, this is my port and toggles console. Right, so now you can see my feature is here. So I added this property here, this one, just to make sure this is working, right? In a real project, you can add your normal spin security or whatever you're using, but for now I just this. So now I disable this. Okay, so now when I run this, I get null. I should not get the null because the user should not see any new property. The client should not see any new property. Why? Because we didn't release this feature. So I'm going to use a small trick here. I'm going to enable this one, right? And then I'm going to run this again. So now my port might changed, right? So now I see this one. Okay, so I'm going to go to my new console and I disable the feature, and now I don't get any changes, right? I don't see any changes on the response. So that is what exactly we expected. So now here is the challenge, right? So here is the challenge. So I'm going to, let's assume I'm going to run other service from here, right? So I'm going to run second instance. So that instance running on, right? So and I'm going to use this port here. So if you see this one, it says project coming, right? So if you go to one instance, the project doesn't show up, but if you go to the other instance, the project show up. Why? Because this configuration doesn't support for multiple instances. That is why we can run this type of things on production, right? So let's see how we can fix this. So I'm going to stop all instances. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here to employee service, and I'm going to get rid of this variable. I don't need this, and I don't need this type of modification as well. Okay, so but I'm going to remove this part by keeping this one. Okay, and it's kind of a small refactor again, right? So now let's see what I can do. So now I'm going to create a separate class for toggle configurations. Okay, and I'm going to annotate with the configuration annotation, right? So and I need to install Redis for dependencies for this. Why? What I'm going to do is I'm going to use Redis to persist my toggle states, right? So in that case, no matter which instance it's called, it knows what is the toggle state, right? So for that, I'm adding 3 more dependencies. Okay, I'm adding these three dependencies. That's a toggle start Redis, and then toggle Redis, and then Redis clients. Okay, so now here when I go to this one, I'm going to ask Redis to get the configuration from my environment variables, right? So now I don't need this one here. Okay, so now I'm getting these values from environment variables, but if the value absent, so it will be used localhost and this port, right? So I go back to toggle configuration. Let me to configure this first. Okay, I just configured entire class, but let me to walk you through that. So here you can see this is my configuration, and it referring from my resource file, but the resource file referring from environment variable. It depends on how your project stores these configurations. And then I have a Redis connection factory, and I'm using those configurations, and then I have a pool config, and I get the pool config and create the connection factory. And here I have a Redis template. It's a pretty standard Redis template, and here I'm just using this Redis S because my Redis is TLS enabled, and for this one user provider I don't have user provider because I didn't enable the users yet. And then here is the features class. So this is the where my features enabled. This is our enum we created, right? So now this is good. Okay, so this is my configuration, and now here I need to do little changes here. I'm going to still use this one. Within my class I'm going to create whether this variable is enabled. Boolean is project enabled. I'm going to ask this from the feature manager dot is active new named feature. And for this one I can get my enum. Okay, so that's it. And then what I'm going to do is here I'm going to do this if is project enabled, do this, otherwise pass null. Okay, so I'm going to copy this everywhere. Right, so that is pretty much it. So now I'm going to run this, see if I create any errors. Yeah, I broke my project. So it can see it cannot read the configuration. So let's see why it cannot read that. I missed one space here. Okay, seems we fixed the space issue. Let's try. Okay, now it worked. So now my port is this one. So I go back here and okay, so now I'm getting data with without project, right? So sorry, not without project. Why? Because by default Redis don't have this setting. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this right in the other instance as well. Okay, so I'm going to run again. So this time port is this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this port, and now I'm getting that as well. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to one of those service, right, and get this our toggles, and I'm going to make it enable, right? So now toggle is enabled. So now if I come back here to this service, it will return me with the project, and if I go to this instance, that also return with the project. Now if I go back and disable this, and when I come back here, it will remove the project, and when I go to this service, that also remove the project. So now you can see, doesn't matter how many instances are you running, you can maintain the toggle, and when you enable or disable the feature, it apply across the board all your services, right? So therefore it is making sure that you don't have any issue of enabling or disabling a feature. So now we are enabled or disabled in a runtime, right? So as we discussed in the previous video, you can have a compile time, you can have a startup time, and you can have a runtime toggles, right? Mainly we are using startup and runtime toggles, as compile time is required more like modification to the code files and everything. and I think I never use compile time toggle, but mainly we are using startup time and runtime. So now this is a real production ready solution, so you can go and like deploy this to any production code, so where you can have a like global, you can have a single place to modify and enable disable your features. The only missing part is here, you need to make sure this particular UI, you need to secure it, because otherwise anyone come here and enable or disable feature. You need to make a good like role based access model for that, and for that it's very easy. You can have another bean. So here, if you remember, we use the default user model, so you can have some permission model there, and you can apply that and you can get the permission done. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you need any other, if you have any other questions, just comment here. And also if you need me to do some other video to how to do the same thing with Node or a Nest based application, let me know. I'll prepare another video for that. Until we see again, stay safe, take care.